Okay, so now we're going to start laying out our basic UDK scene. By default, the engine comes with these snaps turned on, but I'm going to go ahead and disable all of them so that I have nice smooth translation and rotation abilities. See there, instead of it snapping to the grid or anything else, it's all just nice and smooth. I can nudge it around however I want organically. We're not really interested in making this super gameplay ready right now. Whenever you actually work on a project, designers will come to you with specific guidelines and shapes and rules and heights that you have to work with. But with this, we're going to go ahead and just sort of like work from our brain and just sort of go freely, and we'll gradually tweak the look, and once we come up with something we like, we'll just move forward with that. So here I'm starting to duplicate the mesh, rotate it around, see how it kind of works. The whole point of this rock was to make one that was super versatile, that can be used in almost any situation, because the more reusable it is, the fewer we'll have to make in the long run. With game development, it's really about just being as efficient as possible. So I think these are going to work out pretty well. You've got your horizontal kind of at a tilt here, and you've got your vertical, and they look like completely different rocks, which is the main thing. In a lot of games, most projects consist of quite a few, but you'd be surprised how few you can actually get away with here. We're going to just see how far we can push it. We'll probably end up making some supplementary shapes and robopiles and stuff, but for now we might as well just try and get as much mileage out of this mesh as possible. I'm just going to work with a basic floor that's in UDK. You can create it yourself or start with one of the learning packages. I'd highly recommend going through some of the tutorials that come free with UDK. There's one where you build just a small room, and it's very informative. It teaches you basic movement. For example, if you hold Alt and drag, you'll duplicate as seen there, and just sort of rotating it around. This is a good chance for you to sort of get used to the movement tools. They're a little bit different than Maya's. I don't really have them memorized yet myself. I've actually worked professionally in UDK multiple times, but whenever you switch projects, usually you switch engines, and you just sort of have to relearn how to navigate through either whatever 3D package it is. It's the same with softwares like Maya and Max. You just sort of have to learn to adapt. Most studios are pretty understanding. If you're an awesome modeler or texture artist or whatever, they're not really going to care as long as you get the results done, and as long as you can use the package that they have all of their tools programmed for. For example, where I'm at right now, we mostly use Maya. So before that, I had primarily been modeling in 3D Studio Max, and before that I'd been in Maya, so it's sort of a back and forth. It's a little bit scary to go back and forth at first, but to be honest, you adapt within a day to a week, and then you're just as comfortable once you sort of reacquaint yourself. So basic principles of creating a composition are, the same basic principles of painting something or drawing something. Just a balance of small, medium, and large shapes, and just finding a nice layout that is going to feel really good and sort of support whatever sort of story or mood you're trying to push. Right now, I'm just kind of getting rock formations together. I'm not really sure why I'm making these decisions. I'm just going with whatever feels good. I like these shapes because they're just sort of overlapping. And on my left monitor, I have my reference and style guide open, so I can constantly check sort of the way these things form and are laid out in the environment. The rocks are pretty prevalent in some areas. In other areas, it's sort of like hillsides and dense forests. Be sure to save your scene. Right click on it in all your folders to save all. You don't want to lose everything. I've heard that if you add things to your subfolders or folders and don't save it and close UDK, you can lose all that stuff. So that's a huge bummer. Be sure to save it whenever you create anything new. Open up your material and click on your constant value. I'm going to change this to 0.2. If you'll notice, that darkens the material, and because it's also plugged into roughness, it also makes it shiny, because black is completely shiny and smooth, and white is rough. So I'm still playing with the values. 0.4 is sort of a little bit rougher, a little bit brighter. I think that works okay for my rocks. I just wanted something a little bit different. And you can see, the reason why I adjusted it is you can see the normal map response a little bit better. Here I've selected the light source, which comes as in a default environment in UDK. So when you start a new scene, usually these are set up, but you can delete them if you don't like them. I'm just building, that'll build lighting as well. So you can see it building the lighting there. It's pretty quick right now because there's not a whole lot in the scene. So now the scene is built. When I adjust this stuff, I'll have to rebuild to get final updates. See here, I can adjust the lighting. And as I rotate that around, that's basically the sunlight or directional light. You can see how that's affecting our normal maps. Something to keep in mind when composing your scene, especially with lighting or large shapes like these rocks here, is that they create a shape by their natural silhouette, but the way they interact with each other, like the merging of lines and the intersecting of shapes, creates their own meaning. So here I've got kind of somewhat blocky but jagged rocks, like we talked about in our reference. They're not super aggressive, but they're not super round either, so they're kind of somewhere in the middle. I'm trying to find a lighting that kind of fits that look. I think when I do my lighting, I'll start off with maybe either a creepy night scene or something during the day, or a combination of the two. I really like that one reference image of the little lion or whatever it was. I think I'll probably be using that as my reference, but this is a great starting point to just get going on the scene. So I'm just going to speed this up a little bit to about 400%. I would just recommend clicking on your light sources and just messing with settings. Try building lighting, seeing how that affects your scene. Here we've got a little bit more of a haze. It's a little bit too dark in the shadows in my opinion, but that's something I can work out in the future. And just try nudging things around, check your cameras. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving forward with my scene. I'm going to select this rock, and I'm just going to start rotating that around and placing it in the scene, moving it. I want to start building an enclosure, so that way whenever we build lighting, it'll feel like you're actually in a forest or a canyon, because you have to build behind the camera as well to get the lighting to render correctly. Right now I'm just copying it around and just trying to fill it out. It's pretty sloppy, but these things will sort of figure themselves out as you proceed with the scene. So just move your large shapes around. I'd say work in large pieces right now. It's always better to block it out. Usually in actual game design, you get literal box block mesh, where it's just, say, like if it represents a valley, there's just tall rectangles for trees and some basic polygonal ground modeling, and then boxes for large rocks, or maybe some really crude shapes that represent a slanted rock or something that maybe the player can climb on or whatever. For now though, I just want this to feel like almost a clearing, or a place you could have like a campsite. So the forests that I'm referencing, they have a lot of really tall trees and meadows here and there, and a lot of smaller plants, a few large plants, but it's mostly smaller with rocks and dead leaves and stuff. So I want to have this feeling of large shapes and almost islands of detail spread throughout. As you can see here, I'm just sort of clustering my mid, large, and small details together and just trying to get them to mirror each other. So if you have multiple pieces going one way, it's good to counteract it with one or two rocks or something going the opposite direction. So you can see these are almost like waves flowing in one direction. You got these two larger rocks and they're sort of pouring in this way. And then you've got this other mid-ground rock that's just pointing to the right. So they're all flowing in like a direction. I think naturally a lot of that happens because of the way that tectonic plates move and erosion works. You know, it usually creates these sort of things naturally. And also they're more pleasant to look at. Sometimes it's good to add a little bit of rotation in the opposite direction just because it gives it a little bit more conflict or makes it feel maybe more aggressive or more interesting. Like, why is that rock slightly turned the other way? I don't know. It just, and I don't know why I decided to do that. It just felt better. A lot of this stuff's just going to take some trial and error, and I would just recommend messing around in the program a lot. You know, don't agonize over it, because as you add more details, it'll become apparent what's not working. As you work on your scene, you might begin to realize that you're running out of ideas or losing steam, and sometimes this is due to just needing to take a break and look at it again later. It's good to always just check it, and then sometimes the problems pop out immediately. That's solved so many problems for me in the past. No matter how silly or irrational that seems, that having a fresh eyes or getting somebody else to take a look can help more than anything. Another problem, or another reason that could cause this is that you just have run out of ideas with the tools that you have at your disposal, like these meshes. So I think now it's a good time to start creating trees. So I'm just going to throw this skylight in real quick and save your scene.